Coming to you from UBN Studios in Burbank, California. You're listening to the Unsugar-Coated Podcast with your host, Aalia.
Hello, everybody. I hope that you are finding yourself having a magnificent day, despite all the crazy stuff that's happening in our world, no matter what day this is. I know it's probably crazy, but guess what? I hope that you're having an amazing and a wonderful day. I'm very excited about the guests that I have today, but before I bring them on, let me share with you how we became connected. Our common denominator actually happens to be cancer. And a lot of times, I know I speak about being a cancer survivor myself, having been through two different types of cancer, 3 different times. And a lot of people ask me about my experience. What have I learned? You know, and I mean, to my audience, I can just genuinely tell you, and what a lot of us can tell you is, you know, we really learned to fight. I had a lot of things that happened to me before cancer, and I didn't know how to fight for myself. I mean, I fought, but I just didn't know. I still would be weakened by the things that I went through. And I just came to this moment in my journey where, oh my God, why am I crying, you guys? Where I was in a hospital bed and I was making a video to say goodbye to my kids. And I talk about that video often because it was actually because I reached out to other cancer survivors for the first time in my life that one of them turned around and said, get up off your ass and fight for them kids. And it just transitioned something within me to realize that anything I had ever been taught before, that I wasn't worthy of love, that I didn't deserve better, so much of that started to dissolve and just fall to the wayside as I became more comfortable with who I was and ready to fight for that. So, for my audience at home, I'm sorry, I know I'm like getting very emotional, but I can't help it. And you guys kind of know that about me. And yeah, these subjects are a little bit tearjerker, but you know what? I can also tell you I've had the most amazing experiences as a freaking cancer survivor. I have friendships that are tighter, that are closer than anything I've ever experienced with a family member. I can tell you that. I can tell you that for sure. So with that, as part of what we do, a lot of us, I remember one time being asked by actually my ex-husband, once I went into remission, he says, okay, you're done with this now. Why are you sticking around? Why are you continuing to have friendships with people that you know may die eventually, or that you know are still struggling? Can't you just put this behind you? And I was like, no, I can't do that. I can't walk away from a community that mean so flippin' much to me. And I'm not even going to apologize for crying right now because here today I have 2 amazing individuals, a niece and an aunt. And, you know, we are very passionate about inspiring others and representing what this journey is like, both the ugly and the beautiful. So with that, I'm really excited to introduce them to you. An aunt and niece team focused on creating books and products that inspire and celebrate life. Melody Lomboy and Gracelyn Batemen are passionate about elevating the stories of survivors in the cancer and grief communities and strive to inspire others to embrace life with the same vigor. Luna Peak Foundation is a 501c3 organization which they operate and run. And through this organization, they are here to talk about, among other things, Beyond Remission, their photography book of cancer survivors and their advice for cancer fighters. This book is a visual representation of what remission looks like, because sometimes you need to see it to believe it. The book launches in September 2020, and we are extremely grateful to have you both here via Zoom. Please welcome Melody Lomboy and Gracelyn Batemen. Hi, ladies.
Hi there. Thank you for having us.
Thank you for joining us. You both look lovely. For our visual audience, for our listening audience, you know, let's get to it. So Melody, and you both, let's first talk about the book really quick, because I think what you've done here and what you're doing is amazing. And then Melody, I am going to get into your background and your journey with cancer, but let's talk about the book first. Because I'm sure that this is an amazing effort on you guys. And it's taken time. I'm in it, by the way. I just found out I'm in it. I did not know that. But tell us about what the process was and what it really is about.
Well, basically, we photographed over 100 cancer survivors and interviewed them and got some really great quotes and information from them to share with newly diagnosed patients. So the whole idea is that when somebody is newly diagnosed with cancer and they're scared, We want them to be able to have this book in their hand with over 100 survivors that they can flip through and see what their words of advice for thriving are. So the book is Beyond Remission, Words of Advice for Thriving. And that's our whole goal, is to help that newly diagnosed patient feel more comfortable and realize that there is a life after cancer.
Absolutely. Gracelyn, this is your aunt. You know, you've seen her through her years. I mean, she was a child when she had cancers, but as an adult, what has inspired you to really team up with your aunt and push this journey along as well in this effort? And you are a photographer.
Yes, we each shot all of the photos for the book. I grew up not knowing her experience with cancer. It's just kind of ingrained in her identity and how she kind of attacks life with so much resilience. But I wasn't alive when she was fighting cancer, when she was just 6 years old. So it's really been a privilege to kind of adopt that same celebrate life attitude that she's always had. And kind of our whole family went through it when she was going through cancer. It's not just that one individual who goes through it, it's the full family. So it's been wonderful to be able to see kind of what has blossomed from her cancer experience and to be able to adopt those attitudes as well.
Yeah. And I mean, okay, so before we get in, now we're going to move back to Melody, because I do have some pictures for our visual audience. We have some, I took them from your Instagram, of course, but you tell us about your journey as a child. Please tell us, what makes this very significant to you and your personal experience.
Well, everyone has a different experience with cancer. And my first experience with cancer was my grandfather. And he was actually diagnosed 2 months before I was diagnosed, and he passed very quickly. So our family's experience with cancer up until that point was not a good one. It was scary, and you thought the word cancer just equaled death. And I was diagnosed in 1983 when many children did not survive. I was given a 50% chance of surviving 12 months. So I was treated at the City of Hope in Duarte, and I had a really supportive family. So luckily I had, I never spent a night in the hospital alone. I always had family members taking care of me. My sister was super supportive. I'm the youngest of 5 kids. So luckily all of my siblings were willing to chip in and help with, with any healthcare needs that I had. And my parents were ultra supportive. But my doctor gave me advice right when I was diagnosed. And his advice was to keep a positive attitude and that he would take care of the medical part. That's Dr. Rosen. And he said he would take care of the medical part and that I would take care of the positive attitude. Mm-hmm. And so I've kept that with me my entire life. And whenever I've come across newly diagnosed patients, I try to give them that advice that, having a positive attitude is not going to hurt. The medicine can only do so much, but your attitude can stay positive throughout the entire time, and it's only going to make things better.
Agreed. I think that it's interesting when you say that. First of all, I didn't realize we had such a common denominator, and that I've before, it's out there in somewhere I've shared. So I had only had the experience of my grandfather also getting cancer before I was diagnosed. He passed, but I was very, very close to him, and he died very quickly. 9 months. It was 9 months, and I ended up being diagnosed later with the same type. One of the types was esophageal, and at that point when I had been diagnosed, I knew you either got sick and died, or you got a surgery and it went away for those people who were lucky enough. And I didn't realize that you could live with it, that it could be such a process, or what life after cancer even meant also. And I say that to emphasize, like when you say that, it reminds me of how, I always tell people, I don't know what my end result will be, but I know that from A to Z, I can affect the journey with my attitude. Sure, being a positive person does not mean that you might not ultimately, unfortunately, succumb to being a cancer patient. We know that. But how does that make the journey so much better when you're able, to find the strength and the courage that is within you? That's the thing. Like, I remember, how many times do people say, you're so strong? And you're like, I didn't want to be this strong, man. It wasn't really a choice,
Absolutely. You're forced to be strong.
Yeah. Going to the book, how was it, what was it that made you guys say, first of all, this is something we need to do?
Well, I can tell you that when I was diagnosed with leukemia as a kid and survived it, people in our community would reach out to my mom. They'd reach out to our family because they wanted to see hope. And I realized that not everybody has that. And when I was younger, there was no social media. There was no sense of community. So we created Luna Peak Foundation to create a sense of community for these cancer thrivers, fighters, survivors, anyone that's been touched with cancer. Right. And that can include the entire family. So the reasoning behind the book was that maybe people don't have someone like my mom to reach out to. So if they could see these faces of survivors, that would help them. So Gracelyn actually pushed me to do all this. I've been talking about it for years, and I joke that I had to wait for her to grow up to help me, because she really has been the driving force behind Luna Peak Foundation. So she's our businesswoman. She comes up with the great ideas. And so I'm really grateful that she's an adult and able to help me with all these things now.
I love that. And she is pretty amazing. I know. And you guys, I have a picture. You guys always come and support me. You've supported me through my journey as an author. You went to my EmpowerCon event that I had at the Los Angeles Convention Center. You guys definitely always show up for everyone. And so I'm really excited for the book to come out. Let's talk about the experience, and especially Gracelyn. I know we had talked about this in our pre-notes, like, you know, look, true experiences are not always that pretty. You know, I mean, in fact, with cancer, your moments are often, they can be very humiliating, you know, in some things, and what you go through, or what can be made to feel like it's being taken from you. So why is photography a good medium for taboo topics like cancer and grief, Gracelyn? I want you to talk about your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I think the topics of cancer and grief can be really intimidating to a lot of people. We don't want to talk about it. We don't want to see it. You know, we just want to make sure everything is good and happy all the time. But that was kind of the biggest piece for us, is to make sure that we show the eyes and the faces of all the people who cancer is affected by, and to be able to not just showcase their faces, but to also show their words right next to their faces. Right. And to be able to say, hey, this could be you too. And another big part of that is making sure that we really represent the full community. So the types of cancer, age, gender, diversity, and ethnic background, and, you know, all the different types of cancer. And like you've survived 2 different types of cancer multiple times. We have so many people with different backgrounds, and we just really want to make sure that people who are affected by cancer can open up this book and relate to the people that they see inside of this book. So that was a really huge piece for us, to be able to say, hey, maybe it's a taboo topic, but we can talk about it. We can see it. We can see all the eyes and the faces of survivors, and really put yourself in those shoes too, and say, hey, maybe I can adopt that mindset as well. And again, push for that positivity during such adversity.
Yeah, I mean, it is. And like you guys keep saying, it doesn't just affect one person, it affects the entire family. When you talk about that diversity, I love that. And I'm wondering, I know it was probably a challenge to some degree, maybe to capture that, but it's good that that was one of your intents, because I share about how the first year of my battle, I didn't reach out because my thought was, no, you keep this close. You keep your personal business private. You don't go out reaching, you know, like culturally that was ingrained in me to some extent. The cultural aspect, no, it's all, you don't go to therapists. You don't go and get you know, and so I had to change those. And it was the influences of the other cancer survivors who saved my life. I say that all the time, because you know, they were the ones who gave me that guidance of like, no, first of all, that's BS. What you need, you get. You know, you can't be afraid to ask for help. If you break your leg, I tell people, you don't walk around on a broken leg like an idiot. You get a cast, you get some crutches, and then you let it have its process. And disease, which, you know, it's in general, the burden of disease. And this is like my hot phrase right now, the burden of disease, especially with regards to COVID and everything. When you are a cancer survivor, you know what that word, the burden, that phrase means. The burden of disease, everything that comes with it, and how it changes you. And I think that diversity is important, because how you respond is based on what you were told as a child. So how was the challenge for you? Why was it so important that diversity was included in your project?
Gracelyn, you want to take that one?
Sure. I mean, you know, we think about the whole spread of, you know, who's affected by cancer. And you can see this on our online community too. We don't just interview people who are survivors. We interview people who are metastatic thrivers and people surviving cancer one day at a time. We call those survivors. Yeah. It doesn't matter if you're a fighter or, you know, NED, no evidence of disease. We consider everybody to be surviving cancer one day at a time. And so, we make a point of showcasing stories of not just cancer survivors, cancer fighters. We also look to interview people who are supporters and people who are the caregivers. And a lot of people where, they don't feel comfortable sharing their voice normally. And so here is a safe space, an entire community of people who get it. So we really wanted to replicate that for this book and to make sure that people are represented and they feel comfortable enough to share their story too. Because, even if they're maybe a little bit shy to share their story at first, which a lot of people did come into these photo shoots and they were like, well, I've never talked about this experience before. And I think that's the most important thing, to get people where they've never shared their story and they feel comfortable with us, showing it just because they know it'll help at least one person, and that makes it worth it for them, which I think is really beautiful. The entire project is really a pay it forward for every single survivor.
Right.
And on all these pages, really, everybody just wants to help somebody else and make sure that, their experience is a little bit easier if they can just hear their story.
Yeah, no, I agree. I love that. How were you guys able to capture some of the racial disparities that come with, that we see within the cancer community and things like that? What were some of the things that stuck out to you as you went through these? And I'm going to go back and ask you what it was like at the photo shoots, but like as you're reading these stories, and I'm sure you had no problems. I know I was one who volunteered. The minute I heard somebody was wanting, I'm like, I'll share my story. And what was it like? What was it that you came to realize, if anything, from these stories when it comes to racial disparities?
Well, Gracelyn and I both are, we're a multicultural family. We're all mixed up. I mean, you name it, we probably have it in us. But my father is an immigrant from the Philippines and my mother is Italian. And we really want to keep that, we want things to be diverse. We want people to see that there's different types of people out there. We don't want our book to be one color. Right. And cancer doesn't care what race you are. Cancer doesn't care how old you are, obviously. Mm-hmm. So we wanted that to be represented absolutely. And, there are issues out there that need to be talked about where, different races are prone to getting various cancers and they're not represented in commercials that you see. And they're not represented that often when you walk into a cancer center. Right. So, and some people, it's harder to get their medication. It's harder to get treatment. So we wanted to make sure that we showed all of the faces of cancer, not just one race.
Yeah. What were the photo shoots like?
They were inspiring. I mean, it was actually emotionally exhausting by the end of the day. I just wanted to rest. Just one survivor after the other. And we were really fortunate to have an amazing makeup team as well that made everybody comfortable before they came in. So, you got your hair and makeup done and you got to feel comfortable before you walked under our lights. But once you were under the lights, I felt like people were so scared. And the moment I told them that I was a survivor, their nerves kind of calmed. It was really an interesting, you could just see a difference in their face. Like all of a sudden it was like, okay, I'm home now and I can be myself and I don't have to be so scared of judgment or how I'm supposed to stand. Like they thought it was a modeling shoot at first, but it wasn't. It was really like, we want to see your soul. We want to see who you are. So I think once they realized that that's what our goal was, they would calm down and the photos would just be gorgeous.
Yeah, no, they did. I love you had, I know, and I know a couple of them too, actually. When you say that, let's kind of go back to the initial subject where you said, Gracelyns, a lot of people feel uncomfortable when you say the words cancer. And I often feel there's this kind of joke that people are playing the cancer card. Oh, well, when you mention you've had cancer, you're playing the cancer card. You want someone to feel sorry for you. I'm like, no, I want people to know that I'm human and that I want to connect or like let them know I know struggle. I get a lot of people who look at my life now and they're like, and I literally had to answer. One time somebody said, what do you know about struggle? Literally to me. And I was like, oh, wait, hold on. How much time do you have? Because I don't think you know enough about my life. And so sometimes I say those things, but they can be very jarring. I had one time a person say, that's kind of depressing whenever you bring up the cancer thing. And I was like, I knew what he meant, but I'm like, I think when you're a cancer survivor, you don't care. You just don't care anymore. Like, I know it makes you uncomfortable. Let me make you a little bit more uncomfortable. So, I love that you guys do that. Were you guys shocked by anything?
How was I shocked by anything? I don't know. Gracelyn, were you shocked by anything?
Something that I actually loved was when people were waiting to actually, wait for their turn to go in and have the photo shoot. We would oftentimes have a couple survivors waiting, and they would all make friends.
Right.
So I thought that was really cool, and it really spoke to the community that we're trying to build, right? They're in here to share their own story, but on the way to do that, they're already building community amongst each other, which I thought was really beautiful.
Yeah, that is, which leads me to another point, which I think is great when we talk about being cancer survivors and warriors, is that, there's, and as I mentioned earlier, once you reach out, we have an amazing community out there. If you are a cancer survivor and you're going through this alone, you should understand, COVID or not, you don't need to. Like, I was in a hospital bed and I just plugged into Facebook, like young adult cancer survivor group, something like that. And I'm too young for this came up at the time. Now there's Stupid Cancer. Matthew Zachary personally came, reached out and supported me, who is a huge advocate. And within the cancer world, he's very well known. It's how's it been for you, Melody? Like, so you and I are about the same age. You're a mom. How do you talk to your kids about your experiences? Like, how's that for you?
Well, for my kids, I mean, they understand everything, because also my husband is an oncologist. So they have to hear about cancer often, even if they're just listening to him work. So they have an understanding that this is part of life,
right?
And grief is part of life. Like they've kind of are ahead of the game, I think, for their age. But I have to say that being honest with them and telling them that this is what mom went through, and showing them the photos of me sick, bald, going through chemo. And I tell them, like, I was your age. I didn't even get to go to school very often. Like right now, a lot of people are complaining, oh, their kids can't go to school because of COVID, and how are we going to handle this? And my kid's going to get behind. And I've been telling my friends left and right, I basically didn't go to school for 3 years.
Yeah.
I had, home health care, and my teachers would come to the hospital and help me. And you can get through anything.
Yeah.
Any challenge you can get through. And I think that that's what I've instilled in my children, that, challenges will come, but your attitude is how how you handle it is your choice.
Yeah, I agree. That is the one thing Disney got right, by the way. I'm just kidding. No, they got many things right. But no, I say that because it's always the happily ever after. And I'm like, no, it's not always a happily, like they don't, they sell the facade of perfection. And then like I tell my kids the same thing, and it's interesting because like I was homeless at 14 years old. It wasn't cancer, but I was homeless. And for the most part from 14, I'd only completed, as far as in school, only part of 9th grade. And after that, I was homeschooled, or I did home studies. Actually, it wasn't even homeschooled. It was true home studies. I taught myself, and I still went on to graduate, eventually went to university, graduated, cum laude and all that stuff. Like I'm not a dumb person. I'm not saying I'm the most smartest in the world, but I'm not dumb by any means. And so when people are like, what's going to happen? I'm like, hey, listen, I read books. I did things. I supplemented, and hopefully, parents can understand that just because your kid can't go to a brick and mortar school doesn't mean that they can't learn. So anyways, that's we don't want to go into that. But I mean, I love that you said that, simply because I think that so many people are dealing with that stress. And well, when you talk about COVID, though, like we said, there's just so much relation to cancer, and how that just interrupts our life and everything else. And I say that many times, not to be a broken record, but it's true. When it comes to advocacy can be often tough, right? Because you can't say the right thing. Sometimes you say the right thing. Sometimes you say the wrong thing. A lot of things get, and advocating in general, whether it's violence against women or anything, or cancer, it's a big challenge. What made you say, going from a survivor warrior to now saying, I'm going to go out there and be an advocate? And how have you, running a nonprofit? I know we have to be careful. We can't say political stuff because technically, too much, because, we don't want to lose our tax exempt status, How do you take going into this spectrum with this particular climate and really advocate for others?
Oh, it's such a crazy time. It's such a crazy time, but it's such an important time. So I think it is very important that we speak our minds and that we stand up for people that cannot stand up for themselves. And whether that is, by race, by cancer, it doesn't matter. If somebody needs a voice and they don't have one, I'm willing to be that voice.
Yeah. Yeah. Gracelyns, how about for you? What do you see as some of the challenges of advocacy in general?
Yeah, we're very outspoken individuals. We're really big fans of giving people a platform and a voice. And that's kind of what we've been building for the last 2 years, at least online, when we started entering into this space for the cancer community, for the grief community. And it takes a whole lot of listening as well. Something that's kind of different with our accounts that we run, at least on Instagram and Facebook, it's so important for us to be able to showcase a variety of perspectives and words as well. Not everybody has the same cancer experience. Not everybody has the same grief experience. And to be able to give them a voice and to showcase that diversity and perspective and with attitude, and again, types of cancer. We have so many people with such different backgrounds. To be able to say, hey, this is a place that you can come to and your ideas and your attitudes will be respected as long as, we're respectful of everybody's humanity.
Right, right. Well, and that's what I was going to say earlier, is that's why I love, and even on EmpowerCon, when I started it, I had the idea and the fun. I love when you go to any cancer event. Like even though I know a lot of the in-person you can still reach out. But I mean, I will say I miss the conferences, Stupid Cancer Conference, or even the YSC breast cancer conferences that they have. And, you go, and if you're a cancer fighter and you go to one of these, you find such community. You don't just learn, but you grow your network of support, and you find that ain't no party like a cancer girl party, because a cancer girl party don't stop, right? Like, you also find that out at the conferences too. Like, I have pictures of some of the most amazing nights where I'm like, I can't even, and I don't say that to like promote some idea of like a bunch of drunken cancer girls or anything like that, but I'm saying we just know how to have some fun. We know how to let go, because, one of my best friends who just passed away actually, it will be August 8th. It will be the anniversary of her passing 1 year ago. And 2 years before that, on my birthday, we were crying in each other's arms at the Abbey, talking about, I just want to live. I just want to live. And, that's all we wanted. We just want to live. And that's all she wanted, was just to live. But like you guys talk about, when we see those journeys, no matter the outcome, it still matters, the A to Z. How do you present yourself? And when I think, though, about being advocates, a lot of times messages get lost. And you guys have put this book out, and I like that you created the photography, you're creating the story, and that you add because sometimes within the cancer communities, depending on what type of cancer you had, they can be very like sticklers. And, breast cancer community can kind of sometimes, there's the assumption that if you're not a breast cancer survivor, then you don't get accepted or fighter. It's this cliquish. Cliquish is the word I'm looking for. But in reality, it's actually more often not. And I can say that. I've found that. When you think about the breast cancer community and you see how pink, like I have one of my breast cancer survivor soul sisters who every year she puts out the same letter of like, listen, don't be sending me no pink stuff. Don't be trying to put up cute pictures, because that is not what cancer looks like all the time, How do you guys feel about when these things happen, and how do we stop them from happening as advocates? Just in part of the conversation. I'm not saying you have to have the answer.
Yeah, I definitely don't have the answer, but I can say that cancer is not a ribbon color. Cancer is not, this color, this month. It doesn't last just that month. Cancer lasts longer than October. Breast cancer awareness is October, and everyone knows that, but it doesn't end. Right. It still keeps on going. So one thing I do have to say is that I think for some reasons, for some things, it is a good thing where it's brought awareness.
Right. Agreed.
When I was younger, there wasn't a cancer month for children's cancer, and now it's September, and I know that the ribbon is gold. So, I mean, it has brought some awareness, and it has brought a lot of funds for cancer research. So in that sense, I think it's wonderful. I think it's fine. But in another sense, I think it shouldn't just represent, pink and happiness, and, everyone that has a ribbon on is doing great. I don't think that is what we should be putting out there. So I think it's a fine line. There are great things that have come from kind of commercializing the cancers. And then there's also just some craziness that's happened. So it is a fine line.
Yeah, it is, because I know even for myself, I've posted like it's hard. And I think with the photography, David J is another photographer. He did photos several years back. Actually, a couple of my friends were included in what he did. And he did these beautiful, very, I mean, but it was nude, and you would have, I remember one of my particular friends, Jolene, she had a picture done with her boyfriend hugging her, but they were, it was showing the scars, it was showing everything in black and white. And it's interesting because black and white photography can be very forgiving and be very but it's also very dramatic. And, when I think about the efforts that go into showing awareness and making people realize that, it's not a cute cheerleader jumping around in a pink outfit. And I'm not trying to discredit the effort. I agree with you. The awareness is definitely needed. But what does that awareness look like? I think that's why I love your book so much, because the awareness that you're trying to bring is that there is hope, right? Cancer can suck, but there is hope. That's huge. But so many people need to realize that we can do things in awareness to help support our communities. When you say one day at a time, the first nonprofit I started was it still exists, One Day at a Time Foundation, Cancer Families, and we wanted to help families with little children in the house. What do you want your book to do? Your book gets into the home of others. How do you see it? I should say, what do you see the vision for what this book is going to do to help impact the cancer community and their families?
Gracelyn, do you want to go or do you want me to take it?
Sure. Yeah. Our hope is that, this touches cancer fighters wherever they are. Oncology offices and hospitals. It was really Melody's dream to be able to walk this into cancer wards and to be able to put this physically in the hands of cancer fighters, especially when they're newly diagnosed and they have no idea what cancer is going to look like. Well, here are all these examples of people who have been through a similar diagnosis and have made it through. Right. So, just making sure that we touch their hearts in whatever way possible. And I think we're all trying to figure out how to best support the cancer community. And this is a book that can help not just fighters, but also survivors and metastatic thrivers and care teams and anybody who's really affected by cancer to be able to have this book and to know that they're not alone. Yeah. So that's kind of the biggest thing. And also why we showcase these photos, like you said, in color, because these are real people. This is, how they look to us. And hopefully that makes them a little bit more relatable. Like, oh, okay, they got through it, so can I. Right.
Oh, that's awesome. What's been the response from the people who have been in it? I always talk about, like you said, there were some people who had never shared the story for their first time. Like, do you know that you're empowering other individuals? Do you think that this will inspire others to continue and come out and share their story?
Yeah, one really wonderful story is I met a young cancer thriver. She was fighting at the time. And she was so shy. I kept telling her, like, oh, come to our photo shoot. And she was like, no, I don't, I'm embarrassed. I haven't even told my friends. Her Instagram had 0 photos of her with no hair. She did not want to share her story. She was in college and very embarrassed by it. And she went on to finally agreeing to do our photo shoot when we were in New York. And she's since written a book. I mean, now she's sharing her story, and she was so scared before to even let somebody know that she was sick. And now her Instagram is full of her stories and fighter stories and just trying to get the word out there that you can be in your 20s and you can be in college and still have cancer and you can survive. So our hope with the book really is to not just inspire survivors, not just inspire newly diagnosed patients, but also to inspire survivors that are afraid to share. Yeah. So having people come in and seeing them calm down and seeing them just kind of get into their groove and start smiling and taking photos and being comfortable with us. That's part of what we wanted to do as well. So I think I guess what we want to do is just inspire people to celebrate life.
I think that's important because a lot of times, they say you can't take a horse, you can make a horse go to water, but you can't make it drink. And I say, yeah, but you can put some salt in that hay and make it thirsty, do something. And inspiration is key to what we do every day. When we're not inspired, like, you don't even want to get out of bed, right? How do you see how do you, like, within the cancer community, how do you see a lot of people navigate? I can't lie. When I heard your story about being in the hospital and you were so fortunate that you had a family member, you know, with COVID and things like that and restrictions, like, how do you see this affecting the community? You know, and it's definitely affecting it in a myriad of ways, but with regards to children who are going through things and need adult or need somebody, like, what are your thoughts on that?
I think that COVID has actually given the world kind of our viewpoint of being, being quarantined and having to be careful and wearing masks. These are all things that cancer survivors have dealt with, for years. And now all of a sudden everybody
not being able to make a
deal.
trip, not be able to plan for that trip, Yeah, no, I know exactly. I agree.
Right. And being afraid, being scared to go into the grocery store if somebody is going to cough, or, everyone now is susceptible to this horrible illness that, the cancer community has had to deal with for years. I remember just being in a gymnastics class and the girl next to me coughs. My mom runs up and grabs me and we leave. It was that scary, because that one cough can mean life or death for a cancer fighter. So we are very aware of how dangerous it can be for cancer fighters right now, and for anybody. So my family is extra careful. We also have to realize that if we get sick and we give it to my husband, who is an oncologist, and he goes, sees his patients, so we're trying to really be conscious and be careful for the people around us. And I think that's how, if you're in a family with somebody that has cancer, that's how you have to be as well.
Right.
So it's kind of like,
well, that's
hey, world, welcome to cancer.
Yeah, and that's the part that you just never know what. So it's such an appreciation, or a consideration, should I say, rather, thinking about what another person could, have in their background that you don't know about, right? And what's the harm, and just making sure we all try to be as safe as we can. There are obviously people who have actually been safe and still get it, but that, at least you tried, right? And when it comes to that, I feel like, wow, we could just do a lot more for each other, because this concept that only people over 65 are immunocompromised, it really drives me crazy. I am constantly, I get it. I'm technically a grandmother. I get it. But I'm actually a young grandmother, and I would really appreciate it if people understood that and respected that and considered, I want to be around to see my grandkid grow up. So, put on a mask, man. It can't be that hard. I know. I actually legitimately have breathing problems. Anyway, I'm not trying to, I don't want people to be like, listen, these are just real conversations based on what we experience. And I think that we're driven by consideration for others. So if somebody doesn't like that perspective, I apologize. At the same token, I'm sorry that you feel that way, but I'm not going to apologize for saying, hey, this is important, this matters. Just for my listening audience, in case you... So, what have you guys... So Luna Peak, you're putting out this book. What other things have you guys been in planning and working on? It comes out in September 2020. When it does come out, where can people go to get it? How do they, are you doing pre-sales? What do we need to know so we can get our hands on this book?
So we're trying to figure that out now. There might be some printing delays just because of COVID.
Right.
But we'll have all the info on our website, which is lunapeakfoundation.org.
Which people can go there, sign up, and then be notified when it releases, right? Which is even better, because, you'll probably be doing some early bird. I know, trust me, as a publisher, I know all the challenges you guys are going through. And I laugh from, my first book to my second book. I'm like, oh, man, I grew leaps and bounds, thank God. I mean, I still love my first book because it's always my baby. It's my original. But, have I learned so much from the first to the second? Absolutely. And I'm sure I'm going to learn even more between the second and the third. Are you guys, I'm sure you had no shortage of people because you guys did several photo shoots, right? There wasn't just one. Did you guys do them in different cities?
Yeah, so we did Los Angeles and New York.
Okay. And you guys probably had not a shortage of people who had amazing stories to tell. Do you guys foresee other, books in the future, or other ways to take this art and support the community?
Yeah, so I like to call it our Beyond series. So I inspired our first book, which is Beyond Remission, and Gracelyns has inspired our second book, which is Beyond Grief. So we want to highlight survivors of life. So being a grief survivor is also a very important thing that isn't talked about much.
Mm-hmm.
I'll let Gracelyn speak on it a little bit more, but that's our next project.
Yeah, I want to hear about that.
Yeah. So, like we've been talking about taboo topics, it's so important to showcase what a cancer survivor looks like. And, grief is a very universal topic as well. Most people know what it's like to lose somebody close to them. And if they haven't, they will experience that in the future. So what we wanted to do is to showcase, again, survivor stories and to show their photos and to hear from them firsthand how they've navigated their life after loss. So this book takes a look at what a grief survivor looks like. So we've interviewed over 80 people. They're in-depth interviews on camera, and we've also photographed each of these survivors, not just their eyes and faces, again, like we want to show the representation, but also to showcase the mementos that they hold from the people that have passed on and all the objects that remind them of, either their person who they lost or, what that loss represents to them now, and maybe something about their identity. And, just as the Cancer Project was really diverse, we again have so much diversity in this project too, not just ethnic diversity, age, gender, but also to showcase the different types of loss and when that occurred in someone's life. So we have a lot of child loss survivors and people who experience loss at a very young age. Some of them don't even have memories of the parents that they lost at such a young age. And, some of them have just experienced it between a year to 66 years ago.
Wow.
So we want to just, again, give a voice to people who have, previously never been given a platform to share about such an intimate and transforming experience that they've gone through in life.
That's incredible. I love that. And it's ironic because, I was just talking about the anniversary, which it's my wedding anniversary as well. But August 8th will always carry an even bigger significance because of one of my closest and dearest friends. And it's interesting when we do lose someone, we see a lot of ourselves that is in them and what happens when they die. So I think that's amazing. I love it. You guys are going to continue to do incredible things in this journey. Luna Peak Foundation. Where can, LUNAPEAK Foundation, all one word. Is it .org or .com?
.org.
.org. Perfect. Mm-hmm. And on Instagram, Melody, what's your handle on Instagram?
My handle is Melody Thrives.
And Grace. Well, you know what? I didn't put your guys' up just in case you didn't want it, because I know I wanted to push everything to Luna Peak. But Gracelyns, if you want to.
Sure. My personal one is GLYNBMAN, and our grief account is called Snapshots of Life After Loss.
Okay. And if anybody, obviously if anyone ever wants to reach out to you guys and be there for future projects, I know that they can connect to you. There's people out there with incredible stories. You do not know how powerful it is until you're willing to share it. So thank you both for just doing such phenomenal things within the cancer community, within the grief community, within just everything in general. I appreciate you and I applaud you, and thank you so much for being with me today. Everybody, you have a wonderful day. We will see you next week. Thank you for letting us be unsugarcoated. Take care. Bye.